Coming up, as the planet heats up and criticism mounts over a failure to cut fossil fuel use.
We are not going to step back because the situation continues to get worse.
G20 environment ministers scramble to launch a new initiative.
What more can you tell us about this circular economy coalition? Are you impressed by it?
I'm not really impressed by it.
A UK manufacturer is on path to build the country's first lithium refinery plant. Can you assure us that your producers care for the environment and make sure that everything is above board?
All of the suppliers we're working with have made commitments to reduce their own carbon footprints.
And we look back at a month of unorthodox weather on the planet, the good.
This project is amazing.
The bad.
The era of global boiling has arrived.
And the extreme. This is Just 2 Degrees on TRT World.
People are still talking about July's weather. The heat waves, wildfires, hurricanes, typhoons. A lot happened that month. When records were set in June, we thought things were bad, but July was a whole other story.
It was a month of extremes for much of the Northern Hemisphere. July ended with several wildfires burning across the European continent. Hundreds of hectares were incinerated as flames raged in Croatia, Turkey, Italy, Albania, Greece and Spain.
Incendios muchos años, pero como este no. No tan fuerte no. Esto es horrible. Horroroso.
In the US, hot air and humidity hung over North Carolina, Arizona, Indiana and New York.
This is not our first heat wave. And with climate change accelerating, it won't be our last. Extreme heat also does not impact all people equally. Black New Yorkers of color, are twice as likely to die from heat-related causes as white New Yorkers. So we are taking actions like installing cool roofs and committing to a 30% tree canopy cover.
Tens of millions of people across America were subject to prolonged heat advisories.
Extreme heat kills more than 4 times as many people as extreme cold. So it has very serious impacts for our health.
It's really helped.
California's Death Valley, at a staggering 86 meters below sea level, is the lowest point in all of North America. It's well known for its scorching summers, something tourists visit every year to experience. But no one was expecting how hot it would be this year. At one point, the thermometer reached nearly 52 degrees Celsius.
I don't even know what to think because you can't even think.
The number one weather-related killer is heat. 600 people die annually from its effects, more than from floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes in America combined. And even those places that are used to extreme heat have never seen it as hot as it is now for as long as it's been.
But sizzling temperatures weren't the only danger in July. Record heat off the coast of Florida, the Caribbean Sea, and the Atlantic Ocean had another undesirable side effect.
Oh, back up there where there's...
Millions of Americans were under flood watch after a storm dumped unusual amounts of rain across several states. Officials said the flooding in Vermont was the worst they've seen since Hurricane Irene in 2011.
The water temperatures in the ocean around Florida are off the charts. They're in the 90s, very warm. And it's not only in Florida.
While too much rain was dumped on the US, Sudan wasn't getting enough. The country has gone for years without a reliable supply. Conflict, political instability, and regular power cuts only compounded July's heatwave. في ناس عجايز، في ناس عيانين، في ناس عندهم أنا واحدة من الناس مرتب بقصر أول حاجة. والله قاعد أتعب يعني الكهرباء تقطع قاعد أتعب تعب شديد. Power outages are also adding to the woes of people in Yemen. With electricity blackouts nearly every day, there's little escape from the heat.
تنقطع الكهرباء 7 ساعات وتكون درجة الحرارة 45 40 درجة وساعتين على هذا الحال ساعتين ب7 ساعات ساعتين ب4 ساعات يعني هلاك صراحة تعبنا والله تعبنا حتى الجوال تعبوا.
Antonio Guterres, well known for his strong language about climate change, has been struggling to find new and urgent terminologies to describe the environmental crisis. But at a press conference in the final days of July, the UN Secretary General found the words for a desperate plea.
Climate change is here, it is terrifying, and it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable, and the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable. Leaders must lead. No more hesitancy, no more excuses, no more waiting for the others to move first. There is simply no more time for that. It is still possible to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid the very worst of climate change, but only with dramatic, immediate climate action.
But amid the devastation and frightening rhetoric, adaptation and resilience work continues. These shipping containers were converted to air-conditioned, solar-powered homes in Arizona, a philanthropic gesture to protect the state's homeless population.
The pavement gets to 180 degrees sometimes. People come with third-degree burns, just the emotional trauma from it, from being outside. Medications don't work as well. Mental health challenges increase. It's very debilitating.
We've got Dr. Rajiv Kumar Chaturvedi back with us on Just 2 Degrees. He's a professor of ecology and climate change. Doctors, always good seeing you. July was a really tough and weird month for many people. First, talk to us what it was like in India.
Yeah, so in India, the place where I live, it has been raining a lot. In the Western India, there is a city called Mumbai. So it has seen its wettest ever July. So we have not seen the kind of heat that you're talking about, but we have been hearing about the kind of heat that Europe is witnessing and many other parts of the country, like world, are witnessing. So this heat is, I think, related to, right now we are in an El Nino phase. So El Nino is contributing to the heat, but the larger contribution is certainly coming from climate change. El Nino, so the climate changes seems to be the driver behind this kind of abnormal July that we have witnessed in terms of temperature rise. And this is what we expect in case of climate change scenario, as so our climate models to predict or project that as like we expect abnormal or hottest like this kind of weather to perceive in terms of the climate change scenarios.
And of course, the heat, as we know it, gives storms and as well the monsoon season the strength they possess. Are you worried about how powerful the monsoon season will continue to be in years to come?
Of course, the monsoon dynamics is a bit more complex, but it is certainly, we can see that the monsoon has really taken up a lot of moisture from the additional heating that the Arabian Sea has witnessed. So certainly heating has contributed to the excess rainfall that is taking place this year. However, the monsoon dynamics is a bit more complex, but overall, if we look at the precipitation or the rainfall under climate change scenario, we expect rainfall to increase as temperatures rise by approximately 1 degree centigrade. The moisture holding capacity of the atmosphere rises by around 7%. So this clearly means that there will be more rainfall and there will be more extreme rainfall, and certainly the kind of extreme temperature events that we are witnessing across the world nowadays.
So many extremes, records being broken seemingly every week, every month. You know, you don't have to look far online to meet up with climate doubters. People still not convinced. or even thinking this is all normal. When you meet people where you are in India, how do you deal with someone who says, no, there's no climate crisis, this is just our weather?
Fortunately, I haven't met many such people. I
Oh,
have
you're a
been
lucky
to,
guy then.
yeah, I haven't met such people actually. And so everybody whom I have met, and they seems to appreciate that something very abnormal is happening with the climate system, and probably human beings have a role to play in this kind of abnormality that is being seen in the climate system these days.
Dr. Chaturvedi, it was really nice speaking with you as usual. And of course, come back anytime you want to. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, and Jim Scayer, the incoming head of the UN Climate Science Agency, says the world will exceed the Paris deal warming target of 1.5 degrees Celsius, adding that global policies have not done enough.
That is absolutely for sure. So in a sense, the train has left the station, but we've got a long way to go on the journey in terms of climate action. Perhaps what is surprising is how quickly this kind of crisis has come across. Come to hit us. So I think the fact that such things are happening is, in a sense, not surprising. The speed with which it's come across us is, and unless we take further action to reduce emissions, we are going to see this actually getting worse. We'll see these events getting more frequent, and we will see them getting more intense. We will never, I think, be able to eliminate emissions entirely. There's some difficult sectors, and therefore the residual emissions will need to be compensated for by some carbon dioxide removal. And that's something that we absolutely opened up in the Working Group 3 mitigation report that came out a bit over a year ago. So there we are, carbon dioxide removal will, I think, have to be part of the picture if we're going to meet Paris goals. It's never too late to do anything. I think we can get a little bit worried about iconic targets like 1.5 degrees. But the message from our last report, at any point, regardless of where we are, the benefits of action in terms of reducing emissions far exceed the costs of actually reducing the emissions themselves. The message is quite clear. It's still worthwhile doing things, unless you want it to get much worse than it is at the moment. So there is a case for action, regardless of where we are.
We've got a lot to think about when it comes to global warming. One major concern is our home. How will the changing climate affect property? Will we be safe indoors? When it gets hot, the ground can move and cause buildings to crack. We've also got to protect infrastructure against the strong winds and flooding. We also need air conditioning when it's too hot out, but the power must come from a renewable energy source. Members of the US Senate committee discussed how climate change affects homes and businesses. They turned to Louisiana for advice.
Climate change is making it harder on our infrastructure, but it's also killing us. Heat is killing something on the order of 1,000 to 2,000 people in the contiguous United States every year. And as we get more hot days, more people will die. There is a model building code called the International Energy Conservation Code that requires a lot more insulation than we used to put in our buildings. That will help. That will mean that you don't have to run your air conditioner so much. And it means that in cold weather, you won't have to run your heat so much. But there's two problems with it. Number one, a lot of places don't adopt and enforce it. So a lot of places aren't using even current building codes. And number two, we know that it is not the best that we could do. We would save money in the long run with a stricter energy conservation code, with more insulation, basically with better insulation. It is not a question of whether we are going to pay for these solutions, but rather whether we're going to pay a little for them now or a lot later. We do not save money by delaying adaptation. we only cost us more in the long run.
Environment and climate ministers from several G20 countries have launched what they call a circular economy coalition to address environmental degradation. The group's already been facing heavy criticism for failing to agree on cutting fossil fuel use, considering they emit more than 80% of global CO2 emissions. The private sector is also part of the process, with the aim of promoting resource efficiency and deal with issues rising from waste, including plastics, microplastics, e-plastic, and chemical waste. Derk Loorbach is director at the Dutch Research Institute for Transitions. He's currently in Florence, Italy. Hi there, Derk, it's good seeing you. So we hear a lot about different groups doing different things at different climate summits and meetings. What more can you tell us about this circular economy coalition? Are you impressed by it?
Well, I have to say I'm not really impressed by it. Circular economy obviously is a great idea to keep resources in use and not put them in the waste dump or dump plastics in the ocean. So the idea is great. In the Netherlands, my country, we're pioneer in it. We've seen circular economy summits and reports and policy plans for 20 years. But we're actually getting nowhere. Maybe a few % of our economy is circular and it's stagnating. And just like with climate change, we go from summit to summit and from report to report. But basically, the people negotiating there have so much to lose with real transition that all we get is delay.
Yeah, elaborate on that. You say these big polluters have so much to lose in the transition. What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, the economic model itself is at stake. So the model of linear and fossil-based growth, and most of the big countries, and the G20 are the big countries, the big economies. They became big by extracting resources and selling and producing fossil fuels. And basically, if we want to really move to a circular and sustainable economy, there will be much less money to be made. So no resources to extract. And we will power the way we organize society based on renewables. And there's basically no business model for big industries, but also a lot of these countries in that real sustainable future. So what we get is technology fixes. So the promise of technological innovation, and we get delay. So commitments on the very long term. And in the meantime, we keep doing what we've been doing basically for decades already. And what we know scientifically is completely unsustainable.
Frustratingly, it always comes down to money, doesn't it? I know you're in Italy, but you're from the Netherlands. The Netherlands is far ahead in terms of achieving its climate goals than other countries, I would say. What's the secret to how far you guys have come so far?
Well, there are differences in opinion. Indeed, in the Netherlands, climate change has been a topic for a very long time, and a lot of people are working on it seriously. Our country is below sea level, so we have something else to lose than only money, you would say. At the same time, also our economy is based on fossil fuels. And basically on this model of making money on economic growth. And our politicians also struggle with reorienting this. So in the Netherlands, you might say we are the canary in the coal mine. We are a very small country. We experience all these problems of climate change and biodiversity loss, but also of resource depletion, as it's called, maybe sooner than other countries. But what also becomes clear in our country is that the current political model is not ready to deal with the kind of transformation that is needed. Because that transformation includes the political model itself. And So yes, we are ahead in making commitments, in doing the research and the innovation, but the real hard stuff still also needs to happen in the Netherlands.
All right, Dirk, it was really a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, Green Lithium, that's a European manufacturer, is hoping to build the UK's first lithium refinery plant. The company is aiming to open the first large-scale facility in the country in 2027. Lithium is a key element in rechargeable batteries that power numerous devices, from smartphones to laptops. The chemical will be used in EV batteries as well as in lithium-ion batteries and energy storage production. We got on to Sean Sargent, the CEO of Green Lithium, to discuss this. So exciting news from your company. I know lithium is in high demand these days. More people are interested in electric cars. So I imagine there's a scramble for it. Talk about your company's plans for a large-scale lithium refinery.
Well, you're absolutely right. In Europe, what we see is through the growth in electric vehicles required to support the energy transition. We think by the time you combine that with grid and domestic storage, that Europe's going to need nearly 800,000 tons of battery-grade lithium chemicals every year. Our plan is to build a refinery in Teesside in the UK. What we're announcing today is we've just secured our planning permission for the plant, but we plan to produce low-carbon, sustainable lithium for that European market.
What does that mean, though, low-carbon, sustainable lithium?
It means we're taking a traditional process for refining hard rock lithium. So we take a mineral that bears lithium and we put it through a hydrometallurgy process to get to the battery chemicals. But what we're doing is integrating other technologies. So instead of using natural gas, we use hydrogen, we use carbon capture and energy recycling and renewable electricity to really reduce the carbon footprint. And we think we can reduce the carbon footprint by as much as 75% when you compare us to an existing refinery in China.
Sean, to my understanding, the largest lithium producers are in Australia, China, Chile. Do you have enough lithium there in the UK to supply the number of electric cars that you want to?
No, we don't think there is. So we'll be importing that lithium-bearing mineral from overseas, so initially from Western Australia. But as the industry grows, we're seeing many, many more mines being developed, both exploration and development, in places like Quebec and Ontario, in West Africa, but also closer to home, places like Portugal and Finland. So the whole point of our refinery is to import raw materials from many different mines, but to convert it to a consistently high quality battery material for the gigafactories.
Sean, there's some concern globally that lithium mines have a negative environmental impact. Can you assure us that your producers care for the environment and make sure that everything is above board?
Yeah, I think historically it's not always been true, but I think as we move into the energy transition, all of the suppliers we're working with have made commitments to reduce their own carbon footprints, and they're using a far greater use of solar power, for example, over diesel fueled power. They're looking to use electrification for plants and so on. So all of the suppliers we're talking to are on a journey of reducing their carbon footprints. Now, we know it's not going to be easy because the growth in the market means we've got to extract so much more than we ever have before. But I would say that, that the industry is changing and it's responding to that challenge.
The falling water levels during summer are posing a serious threat to Germany's Rhine River. The 1,230-kilometer river is known for its cultural landscape and economic significance. Through it, 80% of the German inland shipping of goods, including crude oil and natural gas, are transported. In July, water levels fell so low, businesses that rely on it were forced to look for other ways to stay afloat.
Also wir haben letztes Jahr den Peak erreicht, wirklich die schlimmste Situation. Wir haben 2 Linien, die uns anfahren, Schifffahrtslinien. Und beide mussten letztes Jahr teilweise aussetzen, weil es nicht mehr möglich war anzulegen, weil das Wasser so niedrig war. Oder haben sich Schäden sogar in dieses Schiff reingefahren, weil sie aufgesetzt haben beim Anlegen. Und wir gehen davon aus, dass wir das dieses Jahr leider, wenn sich die Situation jetzt nicht stark ändert, wieder erleben werden. Weil wir sind jetzt Mitte Juli und eigentlich, es wird erst, also Niedrigwasser entsteht erst. Die niedrigste Situation im Rhein ist eigentlich immer so zu Beginn des Herbstes. Also wir haben noch 2 Monate vor uns mit heißen Temperaturen und ja, wir hoffen auf viel Regen.
Well, the situation is also dire in Syria's longest river, the Euphrates. Environmental pressures have decimated aquatic life. Fishermen there say their livelihood is under threat. Many of them have given up or switched to other professions as fish stocks have declined. Water levels have dropped and pollution has worsened in the Euphrates and the dam reservoir it feeds. They say their catch is now a fraction of what it used to be. And before we end this episode, we've got some great shots of a small village in Germany. There are 5 wind turbines installed in the village of Schnadelweid. It's a small win for a country that's been accused of dragging its feet on the expansion of renewables. Until next time, bye.